I don't know, sometimes this idea that we have so much going on in our lives, whether it's work or family or home responsibilities or the expectations of others, and all this stuff piles on us, and that to-do list feels like it's as long as what Leo's was. And we wish we had multiples of us who could solve this stuff, but we don't. There's only us. So instead of being able to have more and more and more people, we feel like these things are piling up on us more and more and more. And sometimes we get overwhelmed and things get dropped. As I said, we're starting a new sermon series looking at these gospel lectionary readings, but I'm going to try and take the tack of it by looking a little bit at these gospel readings in the light of work, family, life balance. And I'm going to say up front, yes, I know there's an irony here of me preaching on something like this, because I am not good at this at all. I will struggle to practice what I preach. But maybe I am a good person to preach on this, because I am so poor at this and struggle with this, that maybe, my learning as I try and apply these gospel readings to my life can be something that we all can do together. So what I'm going to show you today and over the next 3 weeks is that I reckon Jesus actually struggled with this a bit too. I know that we like to say that Jesus is the perfect person and the perfect example in all things, but I reckon every now and again Jesus was struggling with the overwhelmingness of expectations that were placed upon him. And so these gospel readings that we're going to be looking at, I've entitled this sermon series 24, based off the old TV show, A Day in the Life of Jesus. Because what we're going to see is that, not today's one, but for the next 3 weeks, these readings happen in a 24-hour period. And when you see the ridiculous amount of stuff that Jesus did in a 24-hour period, you go, how did he cope? And so today is sort of like the prologue to this 24 hours. And we're going to be just looking at what did people think of Jesus and how did Jesus handle this immense, intense pressure that he was under. So to give some context to this 24 hours that actually starts next week, not this week, I just thought it would be, that was lectionary reading for today, but it's a good reading to give context of what was happening in the lead up. And helps us understand where Jesus was coming from when this all hit. As a gospel writer, Mark, when he wrote his gospel, did not muck around. He just felt like, I need to tell the good news of Jesus, here it is. And there's a lot of speed and energy in Mark's gospel. He seems to be so much in a rush. Now, I know you won't be able to read this in the building, but you can just skim through your Bible and see how much happens in the first 2.5, 3 chapters of the Gospel of Mark. He skips over this Christmas story. It was almost like I'm in too much of a rush to tell you about Jesus. So he skips over the Christmas story, dives straight into the ministry of Jesus. And in those first 3 chapters, which is only about 93 verses, Mark deals with Jesus' baptism, temptation, the call of Simon and Andrew and James and John, numerous healings, his first preaching tour, the call of Matthew, some teaching about fasting and the Sabbath, the first grumblings against Jesus, the first plot to kill Jesus, some more crowds, some more healings, the calling of the 12 disciples, all in 93 verses. So you can sort of see Mark is just bang, 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 I need to tell you about this. And there's that sense of a frenetic pace already in the Gospel of Mark. And then we get to today's reading. And so what is actually happening? Just before, as I said, this 24 hours that we're going to focus on next week and the 2 weeks after that, what's actually happening in the reading that we had today? Jesus comes back to his hometown or near his hometown for the first time, basically since he started his ministry. So this is the first opportunity for people who sort of knew Jesus beforehand to come back and to see Jesus now. He had gone from being the local carpenter to being this superstar. because everybody knew about Jesus now, partly because of his teaching, mainly because he started to heal people, and so this fame spread everywhere. So he's come back close or to his hometown. And yeah, there was so many people wanting to check Jesus out. The crowds were so big that the Bible reading tells us that Jesus and his disciples were inside a house and got stuck there. They literally could not leave the house. There were so many people inside the house and crowding around the house that they could not leave. They could not move, and they could not even stop to eat. The crowd keeps coming. The needs are so great, and Jesus feels like he just has to keep going, keep healing, keep teaching, keep meeting people's needs. And I'm sure that he was thinking, I'll get around to eating at some point. So before we start to look at the reactions of the people of the Bible, how do you react to something? Like, if I was doing that, if you noticed that I was working so hard that I did not have time to eat, would you think that was wise? Would you pull me aside and have a go at me? So why is Jesus doing this? Why is Jesus? I know I said it before, Jesus is supposed to be perfect. But in this situation, has Jesus got it wrong? You know, he's really not looking after himself at all, especially if he's not taking time out even to eat. Now, the Bible reading actually gives us two different reactions to what's going on here. It gives the reaction of his family, and it gives the reaction of the local religious leaders. So I was going to look at each one of these reactions. The first reaction of Jesus' family. Remember, this is the first time he's travelled back near his hometown, and so this is probably the first time that his family can actually come out and see him since he's wandered off. And but what's their reaction to Jesus' busy schedule and the fact that there's crowds of people around him, and they hear the rumour that he's not even eating because he's so busy? What's their reaction? He's out of his mind. He's insane. He's gone crazy. They just don't understand why Jesus is doing what he's doing. I'm sure there's a part of it them going, he's left a successful carpentry business to go and do what? Wander around, earn no money, and just have demands on people for 24/7? You know, why has he done this? Doesn't make any sense why he has done it. He's given up, you know, his future to just be demanded upon. Have you had similar experiences where people just don't understand where you're coming from? Have you had people question why you serve in the church? Why are you doing that? Or why you give money to the church or to charities? Why you help people when there's no chance of them returning that help at all? And sometimes people just don't understand. I remember when I told my dean at the university I was leaving my tenured position at the university to be in ministry. He was not happy, and he tried to convince me otherwise. And it was basically, you're crazy. You've got a tenured position. You know, he's going, I'm seeing you as a future professor, head of school material. You are crazy to leave this gig. He just didn't understand where I was coming from. Did not understand. He just thought I was giving up a huge opportunity to do what? I think his words were something on like, what are you going to do? Just, you know, have cups of tea with old people. Ministry is a bit bigger than that, but yeah, he just didn't understand. Actually, Jesus' family went a step further. They didn't just say he was crazy. Did you hear what the Bible reading said? That they went to take charge of him. Literally, they wanted to say, you cannot look after yourself, so we're going to take that responsibility away from you and look after you. You know, in today's term, we would say, you know, we would want to commit them to some sort of care. It's a step further than just saying, you know, you're crazy, we don't understand you. It's actually, we think you're endangering yourself so much that we're going to take over. If you think that's pretty tough, the response from the religious leaders was even tougher. These teachers of the law said that Jesus was possessed by Beelzebub, basically saying Jesus is possessed by Satan himself. That's a pretty tough comment to throw at somebody, isn't it? Whereas Jesus' family was driven by concern and possibly love, the religious leaders were driven by fear, basically. They had a very tenuous power-sharing arrangement with the Romans, and they were worried that anything could disrupt that power-sharing arrangement and they would lose the little power that they had. Actually, if you, I've got the verse up here of John 11, 47 to 48, that says this. This is the Pharisee speaking. "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take both our temple and our nation." Can you hear the fear there? You're going, this is the only way that we're going to survive as a nation is if we keep the status quo. And so therefore, we got to stop Jesus. So Jesus is doing these good things. And they're going, but we're scared that we're going to lose the power that we have. It's almost like they couldn't deny the reality of the miracles that was happening or the good things that Jesus was doing. So the only way they could attack Jesus was to associate Jesus with something that is bad, i.e. he's possessed by the devil. Actually, people still do that today, don't they? If you can't attack the good things that people are doing, try and associate them with something which people are fearful of or they think is bad. So how does Jesus respond to these criticisms? He's got his family on one side going, "You're nuts and we need to take control of you." You've got the religious leaders saying, "You are possessed by the devil and we've got to stop you." How does Jesus respond to all of this? Jesus replies, he almost starts poking back at people. You know, to his family he says, "Well, who is my mother? Who is my brothers? You know, you all are my mothers and brothers here." You know, so instead of saying, I need to respond to, my responsibility is to listen to my family, he's basically going, "Well, you're all my family. I care for you all." And to the religious leaders, he accuses them of blaspheming against the Holy Spirit, the unforgivable sin. This is a tinderbox that's ready to explode. People are passionate, crowds are pressing, families are demanding, the religious leaders are accusing. And what does Jesus do? He starts stirring back. He starts poking the people who are angry at him back. And this is the context for what is just about to happen in this intensive 24 hours that we're going to be looking at over the next 3 weeks. Do I need to go off on a tangent and just need to talk a bit about the unforgivable sin? I think I do, because for a while I was really scared that I would actually do the unforgivable sin and live my life in fear. So, 90 seconds on the side, the unforgivable sin. There is a long answer to this, but I'll give you the short answer that was given to me as a teenager when I was worried about it. I said, I don't want to do the unforgivable sin. And an older lady in my church, who was one of my theological go-to people, she said this. She said, "God is a forgiving God, and God will always forgive anything or anybody who asks." She said, let's be clear, the Bible 100% says that God will forgive. So therefore, what is the unforgivable sin? She said it's an unforgivable sin is when a person's heart becomes so hard that they cannot go to God and ask for forgiveness. The way that she described it, she said, God can't forgive a person if the person has turned their back on God. And so if we ever get to a point where we literally can't turn around and face God again, then that's the unforgivable sin. That unforgiveness doesn't come from God, it comes from a hard heart. Does that sort of make sense? That's a simplistic answer, yes, but I don't mind it. I think that's a good understanding of, the unforgivable sin is more on our side than it is on God's side. Is that a good tangent? Where was I? Jumping back. That's right. I was saying that the people are passionate, the crowds were pressing, the families are demanding, the religious leaders are accusing, and Jesus is stirring back. And this is the context that this intensive 24 hours that we're just about to look at happened in. It comes straight after this. Have you ever experienced that phenomenon in your life? that things are already hard. You're already physically and emotionally and spiritually drained. And it seems to be at that exact moment that the universe decides to throw a doozy of a day at you. Have you ever had that? Sort of going, oh, come on, I'm already down. What are you doing this now for? Just give me a chance to recover. I remember one person saying to me one time, I just want a normal few days just to catch up again. That's what Jesus was facing. And I think it's something that we can relate to. And this is what we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks. How do you cope with an intensive day like Jesus is just about to have when you're already drained, when you're already run down? How do you cope with these sort of days? In this prologue to the 24, because we haven't actually started the 24 yet, I just want to finish with two questions. The first one is this. If Jesus is all-knowing and knew that the next 24 hours was going to be some of the most intensive, full-on, demanding 24 hours that he would have in his ministry, then why did he let himself get run down in the lead up to it? Why was he not eating and responding to all these crowds? Why did he get himself just run down? If he knew that he was going to need his physical and emotional energy over the next 24 hours, if he knew that he was going to be working basically non-stop for the next 24 hours, then why did he let himself get run down? Why was he stirring up his family and the teachers of the law to make things even worse? It doesn't make any sense. Unless Jesus didn't know what was just about to hit. Once again, I know that we want to say that Jesus knows everything and knows the future, and I think there are some examples in the gospel where Jesus does know. Jesus did know that dying on the cross would be saving us. But I also think that when Jesus took on the cloak of humanity and became both human and divine, there was some of the divine aspects that got, put on the shelf when he did that. And so I think there are also examples in the gospel where Jesus didn't know what was coming. The Garden of Gethsemane, when Jesus is praying, take this cup of suffering away from me. If Jesus knew everything, Jesus would know that no, God was not going to take that cup of suffering away from him. So why was he praying in the first place? Maybe Jesus didn't know that the next 24 hours was going to be absolutely intensive. And maybe he's just responding to the needs right in front of him, got himself run down, and then this 24 hours hit. Maybe he didn't know. And actually, there's part of me that doesn't, I actually find it quite comforting that maybe Jesus didn't know. Because then maybe I can learn from it. Because I don't know when these intensive days are going to hit. We can't sort of prepare for them. Or can we? Maybe that leads me to the last question. Is it possible to prepare for these sort of, intensive tsunami sort of days where everything crashes down on us? Is it possible to be prepared for them? Learning from Jesus in our reading, maybe we can. Maybe we need to be aware when we're running ourselves a bit low and be careful not to run ourselves on empty just in case an intensive day is just around the corner. Because coping with a huge, intensive 24 hours is much, much harder when you're already running on empty. And this is where I feel confident standing up the front, because I know. I know how hard it is to cope with an intensive day when you're running on empty. So maybe I'm preaching to myself here, but maybe we need to be aware of our inner levels. And when we are feeling run down, or we've, given a lot of ourselves, then maybe we need to say, we need to just pause for a second and recharge ourselves, even if it's just a little bit. Recharge ourselves just in case something's just about to hit. Jesus does seem to do this in the Gospels. And particularly later in the Gospels, Jesus does this more. And I'm wondering whether Jesus is learning on the go here. When he takes time out to be with his Father in prayer. Maybe he's gone, I'm never going to do that 24 hours again like I did. And I need to learn from that and go, I need to make sure that I've got something in reserve ready for those days when they come. As Christians, we have some foundational spiritual practices that are built in to do this for us. Things like prayer, reflection on Scripture, meditation, Sabbath, rest. These are all things that are good for us and part of our spiritual disciplines designed to slow us down and to refill our inner wells. And maybe we should be doing more of that so that we're ready for these intensive days. I'm trying not to look at you, Rob, because I know that you're going to ask me about this later. And maybe I need to be held accountable because I can preach on this, but trying to do this is hard. It's hard because when you've got a person in front of you asking demands on you, it's so easy to respond to that demand rather than to be aware of how do I keep a little left in the tank. I'm not sure if this has been helpful for you today. As I said, maybe I'm just preaching to myself. But I do wonder if Jesus had his time again in our Bible reading for today, whether he may have done things differently in the prologue. If he knew that 24 hours that we're just about to look at was going to hit, maybe there was a chance that Jesus might have gone, you know what, I need to eat. I need to not stir up my family. I need to just be ready if I knew that was going to happen. So let's take some time right now. We're going to do that right now. For the rest of the service, we've got some ways of just slowing down. We're going to be singing a song. I invite the band to come up and do that. We're going to be singing a song. Then we're going to be leading into a time of prayer. And then we're going to be leading into a time of communion. And all of these things are designed to slow us down, to reconnect us back with God, and to allow us to be filled so that we might be ready, just in case if, say, tomorrow is a doozy. Thanks, Sam.